Good morning, everybody. So thank you for joining us for the last AI Horizons of the spring semester. So it's been a busy April. So we have had 3 AI Horizons to kick off April during AI Week. 2 weeks ago, we had AI Horizons in the Dreamery here with Dr. Yun and Dr. Tiffany Petrosini. So if you weren't able to join us for those 4, we have those recorded and posted in our Teams space. And today we have 2 fantastic speakers, Dr. Jacob Holster and Dr. Farnaz Tehranchi. They will both be speaking about their courses that they teach here at Penn State, and they both will be touching different sort of topics, but they both related to custom GPTs that they have built within their courses or pedagogy or content around those courses. So I'm excited to hear both their presentations, and without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Jacob Holster, who will be getting us started this morning. So, Dr. Holster.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to start sharing my screen, but as I do that, you might, I would invite everyone here to either in the chat or by raising your hand. Raise your hand if you have made a GPT before using GPT-4. So just curious about that as I share my screen.
I also think reactions are on. Yes, perfect. So you can also raise your virtual hand in Zoom and we can get a count to see who has done that as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so again, thank you for having me. My name is Jacob Holster. I work in music education. So I'm in the social sciences. I work with students who are hoping to be teachers, specifically in music. So we deal a lot with interactivity, what it means to have and build relationships. But I've also been very interested in AI. So seeing how those 2 areas intersect has been a lot of fun for me. Um, First, to kind of show you some little pet projects that I've been doing for fun, which is not really the academic components, but I mess around with different apps, as I'm sure many of you do, and create little reels like this. So I'm just going to share a couple with you really quickly. So one of the reasons I'm sharing this is because I feel that one of the things that AI can do for us is allow us to express ourselves. And as a person who could not color in the lines as a child, I find this hugely valuable for me to be able to interact with a visual world that I wasn't able to before. And more recently, I've been getting into different like multimodal ways of dealing with like visualization. And so this last example includes 4 different models. One for animation called Runway, one for making the image, Midjourney, and then a new music creation software called Udio, which just came out on April 10th. So I'm going to play a second of that for you. Okay, so that's just an example of some, little projects that I get into. But beyond that, I also consider what does AI do for the social sciences, sort of thinking teleologically. And the answer I've come to arrive at is it decenters the human monopoly on making art, on making music, and on using language. And I think you don't have to be a talented person, whatever that means, to engage with the concepts you want to see come to reality in any of these domains. Furthermore, AI actually does encourage connection with yourself. It's concerned with how you want the output to be, connections with others, as well as concepts and spaces. And I explore each of those in the little art-like pieces, I suppose I should say, that I get to engage in. But beyond that, it's important also to remember that the benefits and obstacles with AI will be felt and are already being felt intersectionally. There are groups of folks who experience more oppression will be oppressed by AI, and those who tend not to be oppressed will experience less oppression. And there might be some variation with that, or it might create new paradigms of intersectionality that we don't know about yet. But I believe it's important to hold this lens going forward as I discuss my GPTs with you. Okay, so I noticed that there were several that had not ever made a GPT. So I want to include in some of my presentation about how that's done. So in this instance, I sort of responding to that, how do I deal with this intersectional nature of social sciences and getting students to connect with each other? So I built this tool called Bias Busters scenario tool, which allows the user to make choices and learn about different ways they can interact with the setting that can limit bias in a classroom. And you can see on the left here that it's a training area where you just basically say what you want to see, and then you can offer instructions, ways to start the conversation, and background information. So I've included these student profiles, and you'll see an example of what that does in just a second. So I've launched my tool. I can play with it now, but here's just a little example of what comes up when you make a choice about encouraging more inclusive classroom participation. I'll let you read this yourselves, but just notice where individuals' names come up and the details around them. So the strength of this sort of direction of use cases to me is the way that I can train a model to reflect individual differences that are very human and that are experienced in the scenario in a real way that might show up in a classroom. For instance, students who are shy or have anxiety, or students who are multilingual learners, and the list goes on and on. So in my role as a music teacher educator, so I'm preparing music teachers, we also have this issue that we don't have a lot of, for instance, high schools around State College. There's not very many. So how do I get music teachers ready for authentic work with training that isn't always available? So that's one other direction I've been trying to take this. But before looking at a music teacher example, I just want to share with you an example for therapists as well, because I feel like social sciences is a broad term and we all sort of deal with talking with people and very specific ways that we need to have conversations with people to help them. So just on the left here is a video that includes how I trained this. The entire process takes 10 minutes. So one outcome of this is I hope you feel more encouraged to make models like this. I would think we need more things and more people making GPTs. So I'm going to let that play on the left, but on the right, I'll go ahead and show you the outcome. So guide me through a scenario with a defensive client. This is as a therapist. And it provides you with these decision points. What should you do? And there are good, medium, and bad outcomes with each of these choices. And the cool thing about the model and about LLMs is they continue to proceed to make the situation better or worse based on the choices you make, just like real life. And I'll let this play out for another 20, 30 seconds or so. If you're interested in the full video, I do have a full video of this entire process that's about 10 minutes long. Okay. And that brings me to the classroom situation or training teachers specifically. So first, I'll introduce this GPT I made called Classroom Coach 2, and it provides scenarios, for instance, here, handling disruptions, engaging disinterested students, and so on, and then provides you with decision points that the user needs to choose between, and then the output, like I said before, it gets better and worse depending on the choices you make. So in this case, we have a pretty typical classroom moment where a student is making a lot of jokes or not being on task, if that's how you look at it. And it gives us these options. And one of them includes calling out the student in front of class. And I make that choice just to kind of examine what happens. And what happened is by calling this out, the whole classroom became tense. And I'm really interested in capturing that feeling, and allowing a pre-service teacher or a student of ours at Penn State to experience that tension in that space so they can respond to it and diffuse it perhaps, or learn to avoid it in the future. So one framework that I'm working with to develop that feeling or make that more palpable is integrating these sorts of tools or LLM fine-tuned models like this in these networks of immersive reality experiences. So for instance, we might have a VR headset with an avatar or an AR headset with a dynamic environment behind the avatar. And the model is giving the avatar this language. The student needs to respond as good choices happen, good feelings are had, and as negative choices are made, then the tension is escalated, and the student needs to figure out how to repair those relationships, which is crucial to social science work and what we do day in, day out. So there's one more use case that I'll sort of discuss before summarizing sort of all of my thoughts briefly, and that is data reduction. So everything before first was like creation, artistry, or art, I'm not really sure of the words for it yet. And then simulation, and now data reduction. So when I was getting my PhD, I was interested in these topic modeling procedures that basically kept me from having to read all of the text that I would collect in a qualitative study, and have this objective way of understanding a lot of text in a small amount of time. So back then you had to like get into Python to do these sorts of things, and this is some code I was using. And I just want to illustrate how GPT-4 through fine tuning can do something very similar. So I call this tool Semantic Topic Modeler. And what I did is a study on Penn State new student orientation students. They come and they view this play, whether you know this or not, called Results Will Vary. After they view the play, they go out into breakout groups and ask questions on note cards about campus living and what it's like to be a student on campus. So myself and some colleagues got a hold of this data, and we did a project along with the NSO folks. And this is an example of a topic model analysis with GPT-4 mimicking the processes of latent Dirichlet allocation, it's called. It's very sped up. But basically, you upload your corpus, and it organizes the output into this table format, which is supported by methods like research methods. So it's not just, I use GPT-4 to do this. It also goes on to give you a methodological justification and also help you produce a draft of a results section using this type of approach. So essentially, you can, in seconds or minutes, take a list like this and turn it into a table like this to boost your understanding of whatever data you have in front of you. Okay. So this approach was actually successful in a peer review process. Myself and colleagues, we were able to publish this paper in Arts Education Policy Review, and I'm hope and it's informing my practice as I teach a first year seminar course here as well in the College of Arts and Architecture, because it shows me what students need, what they're interested in, but also some like distinct cases and how students differ on an individual level. And I think that's really an interesting use as to how it can show broad strokes, but also more um, like details of how things don't align. And also, we had a wonderful event earlier this month where students presented their research in music in the School of Music. And one student I had been working with used this approach as well, and he was able to include it in his honors thesis. So I'm just include this to say this is an interesting use case that I hope more people start to use. And one last cool thing that I will cool to me, it's all very subjective, but I was able to submit a paper that was about 95% written by ChatGPT about using ChatGPT in music education, and it passed peer review, and I got permission from the editor in advance to do this little experiment. And I took the reviewer feedback and gave it back to the model, and it was able to pass peer review. And I just think that's really cool and interesting for, like what does it mean to be responsible for a product, and how are our products changing? And then how does this align with like publication timelines, since this was a year ago and it's in press still currently after a year of change since that's happened. So I just wanted to mention that briefly. Okay, and wrapping everything up, and then I'll be done yapping. I think GPTs can support social impact because they, through these scenario-based apps, can support our pre-service professionals, and that means teachers, therapists, nurses, and more. Their capacity to support others' needs, to celebrate the people they work with, to celebrate their values, encourage their agency, reflect on their implicit biases, and moreover, respond to systemic inequities with an intersectional lens through this fine-tuned training. Because if we ask the models to do that, they will in most cases. Also, I want to encourage undergraduate research through some paid project research assistant positions, and through GPT development in this course that I'm launching in the fall called ANA 297, Creating and Learning with AI. And that's going to be a GA credit. If you know of any students who want to join us, feel free to advise them in our direction. We have a group of 5, and I think that's fantastic, but we can definitely have more. In terms of text reduction, data reduction, I want to help folks do qualitative research analysis in a nuanced way really quickly. And I think that can support program evaluation and research, much like the NSO show. The results will vary, getting feedback from students and implementing that directly in a first-year seminar course that same year represents a model of reflexivity that I hope to see more of. I also want those models to explore the underrepresented perspectives. And we can, yes, there are biases in the ways these models are trained. They have Western homogeneity issues. However, if we say specifically, I want you to interact through the lens of relational ethics, or through the concepts that bell hooks discuss, or something like that, you can change how the model's interacting. And lastly, I want to establish a data collection analysis framework dashboard for folks who want to do these things. So it's more than just these tools exist. I want to create boxes for others to use these tools and increase access beyond the paywall for GPT-4. So that was a lot of me rambling. I'm happy to take questions now, but I'm also happy to just pass it over to the next presenter. So we'll see what y'all want to do. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jacob. So we do have a couple questions in chat. I think we can get started with those and see if anyone else online has any questions. But first, we have quite a few questions, actually. So I'm going to jump back to Lisa Lenz has 2 questions. This may be a naive question, but do you trust what GPT is saying regarding therapy? And also, I think I'm not clear on where the GPT text is coming from. Are all the answers coming from the text you have fed the system from your course materials?
Okay, so the first question is no, definitely not. These are everything that I presented to you is a essentially a proof of concept. It's so that's one consideration is, does this framework, can this create this back and forth feedback loop where someone can learn something, first of all? Then there needs to be expertise behind each of these tools. So that was an example of something that could happen over the next year. My plan is to work with researchers, work with the experts in each of the social science domains that I mentioned to develop some sort of ontologies, and understanding what we do value and trust, what we want to see out of these models. On top of that, for each of the GPTs, you can submit up to 20 training documents, I believe. I've never experimented going that far, but for the classroom coach, I did say, I want you to use the lenses of self-determination theory, expectancy value theory. I want you to, rely on relational ethics and build and using empathy. So it leans towards those things. However, having, again, a human in the loop is going to be crucial, and having like bigger discussions about ontologies and what we know and what we want the model to know and respond to. That's a bigger project. But if we wait to do that until the models are completely trustworthy, then we'll have missed the opportunity to develop that framework, is how I see it. And then to your next question, where's the GPT text coming from? It's coming from the base model filtered through the training documents that I gave it. So basically, if you, for instance, like this is my brain talking to you right now, but let's say that you asked me to answer questions more succinctly, I would shorten my answers through the lens of what you said. It's essentially the same process. Okay. If you'd like, keep going, or if you want to feed me questions, whatever you want.
Yeah, I think we have a few more questions, time for a few more questions here. Martha, I think you just answered this, but she also asked, did you import all the options in your scenarios? What framework? But she also asks, can we get and use the semantic topic modeler?
Yeah, absolutely. You can. I can put a link into the chat. The limitation is you have to have GPT-4. You have to be a ChatGPT Plus user. But after that, like you can use it for anything and put as much data up until the context window and use it however you want. I'll put that in the chat in just a moment.
Awesome, thanks.
Let's see.
Yeah, Carmen has a question, I think related to the other questions you answered, but let's see if this will provide. She says, I may have missed this, but did you provide information to the GPT to use for answers or let it find information on its own? What methods are you finding that provide better quality responses?
Yeah.
And what did you find to be the best methods to verify responses?
Yeah. The best method so far has been testing, like a lot of testing and using it myself, to see if it's actually doing what first, the functionality, is it functioning how I want it to? So the big challenge with these has been making a scenario tool that doesn't go on and on and on describing the scenario, and the potential outcomes of the responses. And what I found is that I began to trust it really quickly in terms of its understanding of sentiment. So does a space feel negative? Is an answer negative and harmful to an environment? I feel like it's really solid with that. And then beyond that, I don't completely trust it in terms of, developing, you know, like every disposition necessary. I see this more as almost an intervention to our problem where we don't have enough practicum sites. It's an augmentation of our program. It doesn't replace peer teaching. It doesn't replace discussion about what happened. It's a tool that can help us engage in a new way, I think. So it's never going to be 100%, at least for now. I'm never going to 100% trust the outcome.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Well, we do have a couple more questions in the chat, but I do want to be respectful of time and kick it over to our other speaker,
Thank you.
Dr. Tehranchi. And so if you would like to keep answering questions in chat, Jacob, feel free to do that. Keep the conversation going in chat, but right now we're going to kick it over to Dr. Tehranchi. And she has another fantastic presentation for us.
Good morning. Let me start sharing. Hey, just to confirm, can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. So my name is Farnaz Tehranchi, and you know, Tehran is capital city of Iran, so you can guess where I'm originally from. And today I'm gonna share with you how I design an assignment and based on that propose a new course. The two courses that I will discuss today are data-driven design, and the new course that I designed and co-teach with another instructor is generative intelligence tools. But before I get into details of these two courses, I just want to briefly talk about my background. I'm an assistant professor at SEDI, School of Engineering Design and Innovation. Its old name was SETAP, School of Engineering Design, Technology, and Professional Programs. I also have affiliation with industrial engineering, computer science, and engineering, and also SODA. I'm the founder and director of Human-Centered AI Lab, which I explain what is my passion. In 2020, I graduated from Penn State, from computer science and engineering department. I also have hold both my bachelor's and master's degree in computer science. So you can feel that my background is in computer science, but I move towards more applied computer science. And I worked at IST, Information Sciences and Technology Department in Applied Cognitive Science Lab. Prior to this, I worked at CMU, Dynamic Decision Making Lab, where I learned about human-machine teaming and how we can develop a multi-agent model in a more adversarial situations, more game environments. So what I'm passionate about is developing cognitive models. Cognitive models are AI agents that can think and act in a more human-like ways. These models need to be interactive in terms of interacting with the environment, with the user interface, and also be interactive in terms of collaborating and competing with each other. And based on that, I decided to call my lab Human-Centered AI because we need to always cycle back, look at humans' behavior, performance, and for instance, decision making. We need to learn and understand our mind because our mind is the only tool capable of completing certain tasks that there's no other tools. Even knowing these transformers, GPTs, we know that they are still not being able to compete with human. So with that, if we look at the 4 types of AI, reactive AI is more like a classic AI, if-then rule-based systems like the chess player IBM supercomputer. These models are based on a certain set of rules. And then we move towards limited memory AI, as its name suggests. These models are based on prior data, so they are limited. Most of data mining, machine learning models are based on the limited memory AI. And the third type of AI, theory of mind AI, is what I'm focusing on, which means that, let me also run this demo, which means that we need to develop the mental state and also understand others' mental state. And based on that, we can explore, exploit, make a decision, explain and predict human behavior. So it's a very interesting area in AI to look at. A very interesting example of that would be rock, paper, and scissors game. When you understand the other player's pattern and try to understand your opponent and develop a strategy. Another example that in my lab you're working on is developing a map of a mental map. It means that how we navigate in a maze and how we understand instructions, finding objects, searching, and even how we include a vision and motor modules to complete a task. And this could be really relevant and connected to artificial general intelligence, because in AGI, the plan or the goal is to develop systems that can replicate or understand the mental states of human. It could be learning, it could be even forgetting all those patterns. And in order to do that, it's very important to include and understand the mental state. So these two are really connected. And the fourth type is self-aware AI, when we include emotions, AI emotions, or emotions of other people who are around us. When we add level of consciousness to an AI agent, this is when we can develop a self-aware AI. So in summary, what I'm focusing on is cognitive models based on cognitive science theory, based on understanding the mind and how different areas in our mind communicate, how we communicate with the task environment, interact with that. Therefore, we can expand the range of behavior that we can study. It allows us to understand human and also use that knowledge to develop more models similar to us, and defining different type of knowledge, for instance, declarative, procedural, or even interaction knowledge. And these models, when we were able to develop them, use them, they will be able to compete or collaborate with each other, with users, and so on. So that's the theme of my lab, to work on interaction for interactive cognitive models, but it's more human-centered approach. I can pause, but feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. So let's now discuss these two courses. The first one, data-driven design, was initiated by a mechanical engineering faculty, And his focus was mainly to develop a course to introduce students who don't have a strong background in machine learning, AI, or programming to be introduced to these tools. But in spring 2022, when I was assigned to teach this course, I thought that let me use my background in cognitive modeling and computer science and redesign this course. So now I'm more focused on data, want students to know the data and how to pre-process that, how to collect that, and so on. And also, I wanted to know about methods and algorithms in machine learning with introducing them to different libraries, Python programming, using notebooks like Colab notebooks, and so on. In 2023, I observed that students are really passionate about ChatGPT. They want to use that. They also want to understand it. So I designed an assignment that encouraged them to explore different AI tools. I provided them with a list of tools that I was aware of, like DALL-E, ChatGPT. I posted on chat about Replica, which is also an interesting AI tool. Has a sad story. The founder of that tool lost her friend, but found herself still chatting with that friend. So she decided to use her or their chat history and train a model. So that chatbot would be a mirror of her friend. It's very unique. It has lots of, I think, questions and concerns around that, but that was basically what I wanted my students to discover, to understand those tools, who has developed them, why, what's the purpose behind them, and so on. The two tools that they were really interested in were ChatGPT and DALL-E. So I thought that they are interested in these two tools. Let us learn more about them. So we also review the main research papers related to these tools, with also emphasizing on data and humans as part of this system, whether they are the labelers, whether they are the users, and how we are part of this pipeline of developing these tools and using these tools. We, of course, talk about attention models and transformers. When I was discussing that with the students, I learned that they also want to have more practical assignments. In engineering design, I learned about a type of assignment known as practicum. They are type of assignments that encourage students to learn, also implement what they have learned. So these are more activities, more like an activity for students. So that was the assignment. I also inspired by Replica, but not using a real data, more like a fiction data. I encourage them to develop a chatbot using ChatGPT or GPTs, but this time give it a personality. because they didn't have a strong programming background, I give them all the necessary parts for developing a chatbot. For instance, I give them server, client, and an example. The example was Monica. It's a character in Friends. I download a data for an episode, all a script of an episode, and I clean it like the previous presenter mentioned. Data reduction, remove unnecessary data, all the lines related to this character, Monica. I keep them, but remove other characters' lines because I want my GPT or my chatbot to be like, or the predictions of my model to be more like Monica. And for this assignment, I use GPT-2, which is a small language model. Also, GPT-2's predictions are not very good. You can see that it usually doesn't make sense what it predicts. So fine-tuning that, training that using new data set allows this model to clearly predicts based on the inputs. So this is this makes it possible for them to compare before training and after training, or before fine-tuning or after fine-tuning. Some instead of using this pipeline, they decided to use the OpenAI API and use the key to develop their own chatbot. Some use few-shot training, prompt engineering to develop their models. So I also learned that they would like to have variety of methods and approaches to develop their own chatbot. But this was very interesting how they interact and use GPTs. So based on that, I decided to propose a new course with my colleague. And we propose a new course for teach students how to use these tools in their work. We submitted that for the Learner Center competition, and you can guess, we won. My colleague, Dr. Gutierrez Soto, is passionate about disaster management and developing smart cities. I help her or I teach her how to use ChatGPT, and she encouraged me that we need to have a course related to that and teach students how to use these tools. And also, as been mentioned in the chat, the discussion that we have, bias, stereotypes are challenges or concerns related to language models. So we also want to focus on that. We had topics that we wanted to discuss in our course, but this spring, we realized that we need to include other topics. And here's our schedule and the main topics we discuss. We begin with the mind, as I discussed. It's a very important tool that we need to learn. We talk about automation, AI planning, history of AI tools, and language models that have been developed so far. We look into details of text-to-image models, learn more about how we can interact with those content, creation models like ChatGPT, and we go review different tutorials related to prompt design and prompt engineering, how they can develop or customize the model by few shot learning or even zero shot approach. We also talk about inclusive design because we were coming from engineering design department, and we talk a lot about bias and stereotypes, how we could have a vicious cycle because our data are biased and you're using that to develop models. So our models will be biased, and then we execute those models, and those models enforce more bias in data, and we gain using those data to train our models. So we need to work on that, and this is the responsibility of researchers and scientists to understand and be cautious about that. So with that, I just introduced these two courses, and I'm happy to say that we will offer this course in fall again. So if students are interested in this type of courses, please feel free to encourage them to register for this course. So with that, I will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I have some questions to get started, and then we'll see if anybody, you can post questions in chats, but so I posted a question in chat, but before I get to that question, I'm curious. So these are 500 level courses. Are these, is the audience for undergraduates, or are they more grad courses? And are there any prerequisites for students to take these courses? Do they need to like know anything coming into them?
There are some recommendations. They need to also have some background in, for instance, statistics, but we don't have a very necessary requirement for students, but they are 500 level courses. So some undergrads, based on their programs, they cannot register for these courses.
Sure. And my question, I love the practicum assignment you were talking about, and I was curious, do you have any examples of like the different types of personalities your students created with chatbots, and what were their experiences in creating those? Like, were there frustrations? Did they find it easy? How was it connected to like what they learned in class then? Because I found that very interesting.
I received very positive feedback from them. They really enjoy that, to discuss about different characters. Some of them look at political characters, former presidents, or looking at tweets data especially. They really wanted to collect their own data and see how they can give the chatbot some sort of a tone to represent and mirror that character. Fictional characters they really like to look at. Friends was very popular. Chandler, because they like the sarcasm. They really want to see the sarcasm in their responses. Was interesting to see.
Awesome, thank you. It looks like Chris Stubbs has a question. Chris?
Thanks very much, Zach, and thank you, Farnaz, for a great presentation. I was curious about your theory of mind model. You mentioned that you include kind of multiple different factors when you're trying to do something like predict what a rock, paper, scissors match will look like. I'm just kind of curious what those inputs look like. I sort of imagine rock, paper, scissors as a very last minute decision that people make, but I'm guessing that's not true. So I'm just sort of curious, like what kind of data are you using to train a model like that?
Excellent. So Rock, paper, scissors is actually a practicum in my course. That was practicum 1. I designed an interface that students can play. So I allow them to play against each other. I provided 2. One was the total reward, and the other one the win count for them. I don't want them to follow a random strategy. So I set different rewards for moves. For instance, rock wins over scissors has more reward value. So I expect them to learn over time that based on the feedback the system provides to adapt. So this is how I enforce that strategy development. There are lots of studies in cognitive modeling, cognitive science about our memory and our or the window of memory. And the studies or patterns that students try to understand is that whether we keep in mind the previous move of ourselves, opponent's previous move, our last 2 moves, or the opponent's last 2 moves. So this is like a conditional probability that they can consider and find patterns. They played for 100 rounds, so they have enough data to find patterns.
Fascinating. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Do we have any remaining questions for either presenter today? Awesome. Well, thank you, Farnaz. I think we can all give everyone a round of applause for both speakers today. And we can continue the conversation in the team space, so the AI Horizons team space. This meeting recording will be posted in there as well as the Zoom chat. So any questions, conversations, questions for our speakers, we will make sure they get to them. One quick announcement, you may have heard this from the last AI Horizons or our last Dreamery speaker series, but we will be launching an AI Provost endorsement in the fall semester for faculty here at Penn State. So keep an eye out for that announcement. That will be coming out later on in the summer, I assume. But without further ado, thank you everybody for coming and enjoy your summer. Thank you.